And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to this live edition of the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. I am joined by Harrison Fagan. He and I are going to be just kind of chatting, talking about the trade deadline that was, the days leading up to it, what the days following it might look like. The fact that the Lakers stood pat is interesting to us. And Rob Pelinka spoke after the deadline about what the day and the week was like and all of that. So a lot really honestly to talk about here. Let's go ahead and dive in. Harrison, the Lakers do nothing. Not a thing. They don't create open roster spots for the buyout market by way of moving Kent Bazemore and DeAndre Jordan. They don't move Russell Westbrook's contract. They don't fire Frank Vogel. They don't move Talen Horton-Tucker. Of all of the things that they could have but chose not to do, what was the most surprising to you?
Now, Anthony, I don't know that you're being fair saying they did nothing. I mean, they made a lot of phone calls. They did a bunch of research. The leaked guys that they were talking about, they had a busy day. They just didn't do any transactions. So I know that that's what you're upset about. But look, I'm not going to let you sit here and slander the front office. They worked very hard.
I can tell we're live because this is not what you have said. This is not what you would have said had we just recorded a podcast.
Anthony, I'm not being serious.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Technically, people were on phones. People were answering phone calls.
There was a lot of texting going on today, okay? I think there were some phone calls made, maybe even some Zoom rooms. I don't know. I'm working to confirm with league sources. Maybe FaceTime was involved. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Do you think
maybe Instagram
texts
DMs?
Or emails are what is used more? Do you think the NBA should set up a Slack channel for GMs?
Well, they do have the NBA does have a group, a transaction group chat for GMs where it's the league announces to everyone that a transaction has officially been made.
Sure. I'm saying that one that they leave open all the time that these GMs can just group chat about. That would be great.
To be honest, do we know they don't have one of those?
Give me access to that.
Imagine if they just had a trade block group chat. It's just you can go in there. We're all agreeing. Nobody leaks it, but you just go in, you list your players each day that you're willing to give up just to save people time.
How many private chats or private group chats are there of these other GMs saying, God, Rob is asking about Talen and that pick again, huh? He's still there?
Do you think that's how it was an icebreaker for other GMs that were making deals at the deadline? They're like, oh, man, can you believe Pelinka called me up again and he was offering this THT, none, and the first round pick. I tell him no every day, and he keeps calling, keeps telling me that he just wants to synergize our processes, whatever that means. And some
GM has a little too much and replies to the wrong Slack. God, shut up, Rob. Nobody wants Russell Westbrook.
I understand that they have to do their job, but the audacity to get into Russell Westbrook trade discussions and then be like, you can't have a draft pick. It's well, what did you think they were talking to you for? You thought they were
yeah. Russ was the asset, Harrison.
Yeah.
Russ is going to
offer you our highest paid player. I'm not normally allowed to do this,
I'm not normally allowed to do this. I'm not normally being told specifically to do this either. But that's where we find ourselves. But no, honestly, getting back to the first question.
Yeah.
Of the things that the Lakers, or at least Lakers fans, were hoping that the Lakers were setting out to do, what strikes you as the most kind of surprising that they weren't able to pull off?
The most surprising to me, honestly, is that they didn't just make some small salary dump move salary dump and a minimum contract, but they're trying to get out from under these the tax penalties. They're Rob was even saying we're going to work the buyout market. That clearly means that you're going to get rid of someone. You don't have an open roster spot to be allowed to sign someone to, so you literally cannot work the buyout market without cutting someone. So now you just on the record created this new thing for everyone to have the guillotine hanging over their head over am I going to get cut or not? I'm just shocked that they were not able to find someone to take on like Wayne Ellington and cash to pay Wayne Ellington,
Mhm.
you know, to just absorb that and create a roster spot, or like Kent Bazemore, DeAndre Jordan. I'm not really that surprised that they couldn't find a taker for without attaching a pick, but like Bazemore or Ellington, like you'd think some team with an open roster spot would have been like, yeah, I guess like, you know, for a conditional second round pick, we'll take them on, or for some cash or whatever. And, you know, again, I don't know that these were things that teams were willing to do, so I can't criticize too hard, but that is the thing that was the most surprising to me, was that nothing like that even happened. Like I wasn't expecting Jeremy Grant to all of a sudden, you know, be in a Lakers uniform by the end of today, based on the way that kind of the trade winds were going and all the reports over the last couple weeks and all of that stuff. It didn't seem like they were going to be able to have the ammo to make a major move unless they were just like, hey, we're getting rid of Westbrook, we're attaching this first round pick. That's kind of our fireworks. I'm just surprised that there were no smaller moves of any kind, in terms of not even just like getting a good player back, just freeing up a roster spot, you know, because now they're going to have to cut one of these guys and pay the tax on them, which is the whole thing that they were telling us all year that they didn't want to do.
Technically, they don't have to do anything. Like they don't.
You know, we worked the buyout market, but you got to be able to find a deal that works for both sides, and we consider ourselves strong partners with our buyout candidates, and we like to promise them starting roles, and we just didn't have that on this Lakers team.
I think I'm with you in that, like, nothing was done, because normally, like, even just from a PR standpoint, being able to go back to the fans and say like, hey,
Lakers acquire former Laker Ben McLemore in blockbuster trade deadline deal with Trailblazers.
Who would have been like the best former Laker out there that the Lakers could have gotten to like put?
Oh, you already know my answer.
Who is it?
It's Andre Drummond, man. Can you believe? Can you imagine if it's like Lakers involved in Ben Simmons trade talks, and it turns out it's just as a third team receiving Andre Drummond?
I mean, okay, fine, same, but Damian Jones.
I mean, honestly, one or both of those guys may become available based on where they got. Although, you know, I think the Nets will probably keep Drummond, but
he's their starter. What do you like? He's their starting. No, I think he's legitimately going to be their starting center.
Oh, God bless the Nets. Such a smart organization. They needed a real star to pair with Kyrie and KD, so they got the best one available on the market.
Your thoughts on this comment from Barnes? The happiest man with no moves made is Vogel. He can continue playing Bradley 35 minutes a game. Let's go.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, he's probably not upset that they didn't trade for some, you know, like defensive combo guard or something like a Cam Reddish, where the organization could have justifiably, I think, gotten very mad based on his, not that he's like some defensive stalwart or anything, but he is a young wing who is actually a young wing with wing size, unlike THT.
Wing size.
You know, the organization could be like, hey, yeah, you got to play that guy a little bit more. and you can't just keep playing Avery Bradley 35 minutes a night. And now, yeah, you know, I don't think he's necessarily upset about that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the human aspect of that of all of this like really gets kind of lost a lot of times, where like clearly Rob, LeBron, although LeBron, like from what I have heard, LeBron was the one pushing hardest to try to get Westbrook out of there.
Oh, you think?
I mean, once he touched the bald spot, man, that guy was gone.
That was it. Imagine we're gonna find out after the season that was actually the moment where
it wasn't
point. Anything else. It was just that. It's like, you drew attention to my biggest insecurity. You are gone.
The only thing that could have made that worse is if like Russ pulled his hand back and had a bunch of like hair dye on his hand, like just like, oh, all right.
Anthony, I don't need you or your anonymous sources to tell me that LeBron was ready to move on from the Westbrook experience, because, you know, like
he said it.
he verbally subtweeted him during a post game, and then the next game, like, just they're like, oh, so what? He's like, oh, I don't want to talk about trade rumors, and they're like, so what do you think about Russ? Like, how do you stay in his ear? It's like, well, trade rumors are really bothering him, and it's like. just like throwing him under the bus completely. And then you have, after the Bucks game, after the bald spot touch, he's like, oh no, we're not good enough to win as is. And then it's really interesting how after LeBron kind of spoke last, and then all, like the media availabilities were over, and then all of a sudden everyone had similar anonymous quotes from an anonymous player in the locker room that said that they weren't good enough to win at the trade deadline. It's kind of crazy how that works out sometimes.
It was really funny the way that went down, where like there was this swirl of activity of interest from the Lakers perspective of wanting to do this thing, and it followed those quotes that you're talking about, and it all came from a lot of people that we know have some clutch ties. Although like to be fair to people like Dave is incredibly well sourced. So like I think I'm not
even talking about Dave. I'm talking about every single beat writer having the same anonymous source player is not happy with the moves.
Do you think there was like a separate scrum? Do you think there was like the scrum ended? They said all right, that's it for these questions on Zoom. All right, all of you people, get over here. I need you to say this.
You're not far off from how LeBron has gone about these things in the past in Cleveland, I will say.
Yeah. I'm with you though on the fact that the Lakers didn't do anything, especially like, look, giant elephant in the room. The Lakers have clearly been strapped for cash all year. And the fact that the Lakers now have to eat money if they want to improve their roster in the buyout market, is interesting. And, the Lakers could have attached some fake second rounder to some player that will never convey. And they could have, like you said, offer up the amount of cash that it takes to pay this player that won't count against their
cash considerations don't count against your tax bill.
Right, exactly. I'm sorry. We just got a wild comment with a lot of things.
So it's
but
like,
anyway.
It's cheaper to get rid of a player that way, because even if you're paying them the salary for the rest of the year, you're not
paying the taxes with it. Yeah. And so like I was surprised that they didn't do something like that. And even because that next team could have just waived that player. Yeah. Whatever team that DeAndre Jordan goes to some
like $30 million in cap room on the table. They could have easily done this, and instead, I'm happy for their players. They're all going to get a bonus. Lakers legend Kenny Hustle is going to get a nice little bonus check at the end of the season. Mike Muscala, all these guys.
Was there any players that weren't traded today that surprised you that they weren't moved?
I'm kind of surprised that Kenrich Williams wasn't, given kind of all the noise that we've heard for the last month about like, oh, the Thunder think they can get a first round pick for him. It's like I was always dubious about them getting a first round pick, but I'm surprised that they didn't get a couple seconds to move on or something like that. Like, I mean,
same goes for like Eric Gordon. And this was something that I was kind of charting.
Hand up. I got to apologize. I got by the Chris Haynes fake tweet about Eric Gordon. That was not my fault. That was Nekias Duncan. He did it, and then he put it on my timeline, and I'm like, oh, Chris Haynes bomb, because I wasn't on my phone. I was on TweetDeck, and it's like, oh,
No, so we were live, unfortunately, when you did that, and we had a nice little moment watching that live. As Nekias gets... Well, first, actually, Sabrina got. She threw it into... She mentioned it with us that Eric Gordon just got traded, and I was like, who's reporting this? Because I didn't get any kind of notification. And then apparently she probably got it from Nekias. You got it also from Nekias, and everybody just
I'm only apologizing so much.
Look, I wonder if that was the one time he's cussed. Like... Fuck off, fake Chris Haynes. He actually said LMAO instead of LMBO.
A good at too. That's what I'm most mad about. Like they didn't even disguise the at. It was like amateur hour, and I fell for it, and I'm embarrassed.
But I was surprised that Eric Gordon didn't get moved. I was less surprised that Christian Wood didn't get moved, just because like he's a better player than Gordon. Even if right now he doesn't look like it, just because that situation out there in Houston is so bad and sad that I just don't think he's playing very hard. But
And
Gordon
his value
has
is probably nebulous after that stuff earlier this year. Like, that most teams were not putting forth their best offer for him. They were thinking like, oh, we can, distressed player, distressed asset, whatever.
right.
I don't like talking about people in those terms, but they felt
Oh,
I
sure.
can't think of a better one offhand. And like they probably felt like they could get him and kind of steal him away for not very much.
Right. So I was, but like Gordon though, people knew exactly what they were going to be getting. And this is something that I talked about in the weeks leading up to this. Was all we kept hearing about was how much these guys might be going for. How much
Seller's market. Everybody's getting a first round pick for every guy.
Exactly. 2 first rounders for Jeremy Grant. There's, the Pacers were expecting 73 first rounders for either one of their front court guys.
Yeah.
Like they wind up getting, they got a first rounder.
Yeah,
Halliburton, who is like a legit first round value, and then they got a high second rounder, so they came fairly close, I think. But like other trades, though, Reddish goes for kind of crappy first round pick that's probably going to be a couple seconds, and a player in Kevin Knox that is just not an NBA player. So like I was surprised over the course of this that those prices from these sellers, even if it's a quote unquote seller's market, never came down. I was really kind of surprised that there was never any kind of, motion back to reality. And instead of moving players for more realistic returns, all these teams just basically said, nope, no moves. And that really struck me as interesting because that's something that Mitch Kupchak used to do a lot was, he would have Pau Gasol out there on the trade market a lot, literally traded Pau at one point, but Pau was like perpetually being on the trade market, and everybody knew that he was eventually going to leave the Lakers. And Mitch basically said, I would rather lose Pau for nothing than have to take back a bad contract, a player that kind of sets the market for future deals, all of that. So while I understand where they're coming from, I was just kind of surprised that you would just kind of pass up the opportunity to get anything whatsoever for some of these guys.
I think sometimes that is more of a long-term play for these front offices where it's like, we don't want to be seen as the guys who are bad negotiators, who are going to back down or from our original price all the time, because then, you're never going to take our first request seriously. And I think for some of these, it's like about making a statement and, about kind of the long game with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can I throw kind of a tinfoil theory at you here with Pelinka and the Lakers specifically?
Is it about him going to Disneyland? Because those pictures weren't like that wasn't from today, Anthony.
Oh,
like
okay,
if you fell
we'll
for that,
all right. We'll. Hey, you fell
Can you
for
imagine if he
fake
had,
Chris Haynes.
shown up to his press conference, not said anything, but just had like Mickey Mouse ears on?
Mickey Mouse shows up looking like Daft Punk. Rob, take off the.
No
ears.
one asked about
sorry.
it. He doesn't address it. It's just he's on the Spectrum video answering the questions in Mickey Mouse ears, and then occasionally like he grabs like a caramel apple from a thing and just like takes a bite.
Honestly,
I would have demanded the Lakers extend him if he had done
Yeah,
it. Like if he
I
was
would've-
that in on the bit, I would have been all like totally behind Rob Pelinka, max extension for life.
Goofy is standing behind him during the.
Somebody
I
asked me
brought
if they let
my
Daffy
good
Duck get a
friend
question
Goofy.
in.
Rob, what was your reaction to some of the trade demands from some of these players? Gorge.
See, this is how you know he doesn't have like a real sense of humor because, come on, man, at least make a joke about it.
It's right
Like,
there.
oh, this trade deadline was really a roller coaster for everyone in the organization. And to act like it was
we were
spending
hoping to
day
make
at
a
theme
splash
park.
mountain. And so all right, so here's my actual like kind of semi-serious take here. Moving on from Splash Mountain.
I'm sorry.
So we could have riffed on that for a while, right?
Yeah, no, look, I if there's one thing I have and that my relationship has prepared me for, I could have gone a while on the Disney references.
Yeah. How have you felt about the Russell Westbrook experience? Well, sometimes with stars, they take you on these tours, and it doesn't go very well. All right, but
It's like, we want to send him to Mickey's driving school, but to cut down on these turnovers.
I was about to make a joke about like Disney cart food with the turnovers, but I don't think they serve those anymore. It's more churros.
Looking for value on the market today, it was like Finding Nemo. You gotta.
We called Toronto, but they didn't want to talk about Bruno.
I wish that was real. Like, I want to get a leak in 2 months that the Lakers couldn't get deals done because Rob couldn't hear what the other GMs were saying while he was at Disneyland. Like, the crowd noise was too loud.
Hold on, I'm standing here with Chewy. I'll call you right back. I've been in line to get this guy's autograph for like 15 minutes. Hold on.
All right, what's your actual conspiracy theory?
All right, yeah, I guess we should get back to all right, so if you're listening right now, if you're watching, like this is us like laughing, and this is at least me laughing at my pain because I was hoping that the Lakers would do literally anything today.
It's like, how can you not laugh about it at this point? I understand, like, people care about this, and like, I care about this. I care about doing this well and whatever, but like at this point, you have to laugh at this season. It's just gotten so ridiculous, and it's the only. If you can't joke your way out of this, then like I don't know, like I can't help you. There's no X's and O's solutions that I can offer at this point for what is going, like what has gone wrong,
and also
this kind of deep spiritual disease. Like it's.
And also, like, if you're listening right now, if you're watching right now, good chance you've been listening to the podcasts over the course of the season. You've heard plenty of me get angry and upset about the various states of the Lakers. And at this stage, all I can do is laugh because, if you've been listening, you've probably seen a lot of this coming.
This is the Lakers Lounge. We're throwing up a drink and just like kicking one back with the boys. And
exactly.
Just relaxing after a long, hard day in the blog mines.
Mm-hmm. So my kind of tinfoil take here about the Lakers and about the way they've kind of done business is that I think Rob is kind of operating from kind of a deficiency here, where I think people around the league probably look at him and the Lakers and kind of want to stick it to them a little extra. They got Anthony Davis served to them on a platter because of the clutch ties with LeBron. LeBron came to the Lakers, and whether you want to believe it's because he wanted to work with Magic Johnson, whether you're on the other end of the spectrum where you're saying that he came here just to do Space Jam 2, regardless, there were reasons beyond basketball that he wanted to come to the Lakers. And I'm sure there are people around the league that are probably saying, hey, we get the opportunity to watch these guys kind of toil in their own bullshit. We're going to let them. We're going to allow, there might be a more reasonable, some of Pelinka's offers might have been altogether reasonable. But I'm sure there are executives around the NBA who are probably saying, no, why should we help you out of this situation that you made for yourself? The hubris kicked in way too far. You made this move for Russell Westbrook, just one star too many. No, you made this bed. You stapled that. You super glued those sheets to the sides of the bed. You got to lie in this shit, man. And I think a lot of times that's kind of what the Lakers are kind of dealing with here.
No, and I think, it's been well reported going back to when he was kind of elevated to this current position with Rob after Magic left, where he's not a guy that is well liked by a lot of other team executives and like so at least the longer tenured ones that dealt with him as an agent. Like, it's like he's gotten a lot of deals done with the Cavs. You know who didn't have to deal with Rob Pelinka, the agent? Kobe Altman. He never had a difficult contract negotiation with Rob Pelinka because he wasn't in his current job. And so I think some of that stuff will dissipate. But I think the thing you're talking about is real, too. And I forget which one of the insiders reported it today, but someone put basically, like no one is in a rush to help the Lakers get out of this. And the situation that they're in. And, why would they be? It's not their job to help the Lakers. It's their job to help themselves. And if the Lakers, through kind of their own underperforming players and, kind of the nebulousness and how far out that first round pick is and kind of, the lack of desirable players or picks or whatever on their roster, if they can't put together a package that another team feels like this is going to help me in my specific situation. There's only 29 other teams that you can deal with, you know, they may have just not felt like that was the right fit for them and not valued that stuff any much. Like, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just like, it's not their job to help the Lakers out. And like, you know, David Stern would have gotten it. You can bet your ass David Stern would have gotten involved and forced someone to send a shooter and like a defender to the Lakers or something like that. But Adam Silver is more hands off on this kind. Like, he would have rigged like a mid-season draft lottery where the Lakers get to have like Bronny play out the season with them or something. I don't know. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, somebody, a player who actually would have helped. But yeah, I think. Like, I think with where the Lakers currently find themselves and that standing within the league, I would imagine also, like, I wonder if it goes so far. And look, again, this is a tinfoil thing. This is not me whining because of how difficult the Lakers must have it.
Again, anyone who clips this, edit that part out. This is me whining.
The start. Yes, this is not me whining. But I like. The starting point of this conversation is that the Lakers maybe had it easier to be able to get LeBron and AD because they are the Lakers. Like, anything that comes from there is just a response to that reality. And I kind of wonder if, you know, teams that do help the Lakers probably want, like, somebody likened Seth Partnow was on there today. Obviously, everybody was on Twitter, but Seth Partnow quoted somebody who basically said that being an NBA GM is a lot like being in high school, where these deals kind of resonate, and the way that you operate within that group really resonates and all of that. And they likened it to high school. And Seth said, like, honestly, there's a lot in common there with how everybody kind of knows each other. And it kind of really makes sense. It's a small freaking league, man. It's only 29 other GMs that Rob has to deal with, and it's
only
also
highly competitive people that I think
also
are.
That
we're seeing this with Jerry West. You know, there are a decent amount of personality types where these people do not get along with people very well. If you know anyone who's reading Chris Herring's book, you know, about like the Pat Riley stories in there and stuff like that. Like, these are not people who just get along with everyone and don't hold grudges. You know,
Pat Riley sent out a memo to tell Danny Ainge to go fuck himself. He
greatest team statement of all time. It was like on the official Miami Heat letterhead. Like, it said, like, tell Danny Ainge to shut the bleep up. And I don't think he said bleep.
No, he didn't. Yeah. Some poor PR person had to go to their boss and say,
"Are you kidding me? That was the greatest day of their life." They're like, "Pat Riley instructed me to put this out."
No, you don't know how PR people operate, man.
I don't know. I feel like
I bet the bosses, the PR boss was probably like who has worked with PR or with Pat Riley for a long time. I'm sure that guy was like,
hell
okay,
yeah, this is awesome.
Let's go. Fuck Danny Ainge.
But I'm sure, like, on it, watermark.
if that started at some like kind of lower level PR person, they probably went there sweating like, Pat Riley is telling me to do this.
Oh, sir.
What do we do? This? And his boss is like, hell yeah, we're allowed to do this. Okay, let's do it.
I think Pat Riley did not run that idea by the intern first before deciding to do it.
He had to run it up the chain of command, Harrison. Yeah. Having started at the top of the chain of command. All right. So that was basically like one of my takeaways here was, look, when the Lakers put themselves, and by the way, this was some of the math that I probably should have figured into my initial analysis of the Russ trade, was like, if this doesn't work out, nobody is going to be interested in helping the Lakers. And that
the Lakers themselves leaked, we don't have a plan B in like December. They're like, if this doesn't work, we don't have one. And it's like, I mean, we all see your roster, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like the other day when there was the leak that it's like Lakers internal sources don't believe that the team can contend for anything meaningful. It's like, yeah, dude, like, you know,
they have eyes.
That Lakers sources are saying that, and so that's, you know, that is newsworthy. But it's also like, yeah, like confirmation, like Lakers sources have access to the NBA standings page. You know,
no, like, Lakers sources have access to the games that the Lakers are playing in.
I mean, it's still incredibly notable. The Lakers are like telling reporters, are like, yeah, this shit's not going to work like like 2 days before the trade deadline. But still, it's like, yeah, I mean, we can all see that. It's the same thing with the Russ thing. It's like, oh, you're telling me, like Chris Haynes went on TNT tonight, reported that, the Lakers turned down the Rockets' offer of John Wall. And this is actually this was interesting phrasing. It's the only time I can ever remember where we've gotten a leak of an offer, and the offer was of a player for a certain pick and another player, where usually it's the offer includes the picks, but he's like, the Lakers turned down the offer of John Wall for Russell Westbrook and a first round pick. And it's I had to reread it because I'm like, wait, the Rockets, because I saw offer and my brain was breaking. And it's
also TNT tweeted out the wrong, they tweeted out the wrong sentence.
That probably did not do me any favors. But
they basically tweeted out that the Lakers turned down the Rockets offering John Wall and the pick for Russ. And Lakers fans, I saw Lakers fans, I went through the comments and the replies to it.
Can you imagine?
Lakers fans were losing their goddamn mind. And if you listen to Chris, he's very clear. He says it in very much of the way that reporters, please do me a favor. Speak normal English. Let's just try this. Let's just try. I understand that you have sourcing that you have to protect in all of this, but we don't have to I listen to Sean speak, and I read his writing, and it looks like he's using the center predictive word, the predictive text when he's reporting these things. Let's actually use decent language here to be able to report these anyway. But yeah,
I'm not touching that. But I am gonna say, it was, it's yeah, no duh. But it's I'm not that surprised that the Lakers turned that down, because it's can you imagine how it must feel like the Sharks are circling when teams are calling you and they're offering a guy who has played 40 games in the last 3 years total.
Yeah.
Straight up missed 2 of the last 3 seasons, played 40 games last season before being shut down, and has the exact same contract as Russ. And they're like, hey, do you want to we are offering you this guy very generously on our part.
You're welcome.
John Wall can really help you. We, the Rockets really want to help out the Lakers. Mm-hmm. But, we just, just for our trouble, we'd like you to throw in the 2027 first. That's got to feel like an FU. I can understand why the Lakers aren't doing that. And I can also understand where, I think the thing, it's oh, well, why didn't they fire Vogel today? Why didn't they, why didn't Pelinka get off of Russ today? Whatever. It's about job security. Put yourself in Rob Pelinka's shoes, as he's walking around Disneyland and he's thinking about these decisions that he has to make, where he is just it's okay, if I fire Frank, this probably isn't going to get that much better. Maybe it'll get a little better depending on what you think of Frank Vogel. I know I've been critical of him, but I don't know that, Phil Handy or David Fizdale are fixing this, with the exact same roster, where it's just the coaching change is going to get this team, out of the play-in range or something like that and go on a real run. I don't think that they are a Frank Vogel departure away from a meaningful run, if that makes sense. Even if I don't think that Frank has done a very good job this year, I think this roster is just also very flawed, to where I don't think that firing him is if I were Rob, I'm not thinking that firing him is going to cause a gigantic run. So then it's so what does that do? Because you fired Vogel, you use that bullet in the chamber, and then we get to this summer and it's oh wow, yeah, it's Kendrick Perkins' voice, the Lakers still stink. And who is the blame gonna go to if they already fired Frank? It's going to go right to Rob, And so if you wait until the offseason, you can fire Frank, be that was all that guy's fault, and you can't prove me wrong because we aren't playing more games. And, it's for same thing with Russ, where you just talked about how thrilled you were to bring in the Kobe heir apparent and this Los Angeles kid and get a 3rd star of Russ's caliber and all this stuff at this glowing press conference, took a victory lap, whatever. And then you're yeah, Jeannie, actually, I think we got to attach a 1st round pick to get off of this guy. What does that do for your job security? So I understand why they did nothing and why they may continue to do nothing, because this season may be lost either way. And if you're looking for human meat shields, it's a lot easier to keep those guys around if you're trying to protect your own job.
I mean, it sucks to think about it that way, because what fans are always
want
hoping,
everyone to be rowing in the same direction and whatever, but that's very clearly not what is going on.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the season and all the leaks. That's not what's happening.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying that if I'm a fan right now listening to this or watching this, I'm probably saying God, this guy's
Yeah, to be
fucking
clear,
right.
this is not a defense of Rob Pelinka. This is just trying to understand why these things may have happened. And he's like, oh, I came into the office the other day and Kurt was sitting at my desk. And
He took a bite of my brand new caramel apple from Disneyland. I paid $37 for that thing.
Kurt's just bullying Rob around the office. Like Rob sits down with his lunch. Kurt just walks over, takes a bite out of his sandwich and puts it back on the plate. Like, it's like
Now
big
I'm
dog
picturing
eat
like
first.
everything that Rob eats is like Disney themed. So, like,
It's got
it's
like,
like a
the
ham.
Mickey Mouse ear frosted cookies,
He has like a specific like bread cutter that is just the mold of Mickey Mouse. And when he makes himself a PB&J, he just plants it down there. That's how he cuts off the crust of his sandwich.
Like, Rob, what are you having for lunch today? He's like, oh, I got the grilled cheese and tomato combo from Disneyland to go. I brought it into work.
Kurt goes over and
Colby, you can
Bites
still
off.
taste the magic.
Kurt goes over and bites off the left ear. You know.
Just drinks the whole cup of tomato soup.
Oh man, but look, I'm not disagreeing that what you're
Yeah,
saying
like that sucks to
is
say, and
like
that sucks
yeah.
that that's probably what is happening. But that's why
Well,
I can't
it was
see-
also widely
Yeah.
reported, by the way. Like the thing that I give, I think, by the way, like I do want to give a shout out to the beat guys and the
after criticizing their writing.
huh?
After criticizing their writing.
No,
Like,
no, 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 no. That's different.
Okay.
I like that's different. I'm look.
No, I think
You
seriously,
can't sit
we
here and
have
tell me
gotten-
that like Chris and Woj and Sean
yeah.
speak like normal human beings when they go on there.
you
to-
read the coverage from the beat reporters over like the last little bit, you do get a very like good sense because all these guys are most of them are talking to different people, like, and you could tell in these stories that there are these competing voices of anonymous sources and what they want
Yes.
to do. Or like you had Eric Pincus the other day was reporting, he reported like the Lakers would only do a deal for John Wall if LeBron James and Clutch really pushed for it. And it's like, oh, that was, that's that's interesting. I wonder who was telling him that. I don't think it was LeBron and Clutch.
Yeah,
That's like oh, if we make this move, I want you all to know who did that.
right
getting
after
out
they
ahead of
traded for Russ.
Yeah,
Like that. By the way, if you guys are like, I think at some point it'll be interesting to look back on the season in its entirety and look back on like where it went wrong and what were the first signs that it was going wrong. When they traded for Russell Westbrook, and the first report about it was that was all LeBron. Like, that was probably, it should have been a red flag to everybody that this might not go very well. It's very difficult. By the way, it's not even. I think this is something that I think gets lost in the conversation about.
4-0, might be 5-0 as an All-Star game GM. So please don't like insult his credentials. Okay, like
Look, he earned himself like 17 wins today. That was an incredible showing.
Awesome All-Star draft.
but like I think we got to move on here in a second to about like where the Lakers go from here and stuff. But I also do want to say that I think one thing that gets lost in the conversation about Russ, because like the Lakers lose to the Blazers last night or Wednesday night, if you guys are listening to this on Friday morning, and the conversation after that is, oh my goodness, you'll never believe it, but Russ isn't the entire problem with the Lakers. It's like, no, Russ the player isn't like that.
It's like no duh. Like
Yeah, like Russ the player isn't the problem. Malik Monk has had
he would have to play to be the only problem, and the team is still this bad.
He'd have to be actively shooting on the Lakers basket.
Yeah, or like injuring the players himself.
Right.
Right.
So no, I've never thought that Russ the
like
player.
tripping LeBron while he's driving to the basket. It's like, yeah, damn, Russ.
Taylor almost called for that foul. They turned it over, but he tripped the wrong guy. But no, I think I Twitter is what it is. Like people are always going to try to double and triple down so that what they said at the beginning of the year looks that much better by the end of it. But when we talk about Russ and you have people who liked the Russ trade, of course they're going to go out there and say like, oh, the Lakers lost to Portland without Russ. AD and LeBron played. He clearly isn't the only problem. No, Then the
How
problem
mad would
is
you have been if I had started doing that last night? Like
I would have known it would have
as
been a
one of the
bit.
original advocates of the Russ trade.
Nah, I know that you're too self-aware. Like I know you wouldn't do that, but like
Can't judge
yeah,
until Russ gets back, Anthony.
that was a good
New
tweet.
season starts
That
Saturday.
was a solid tweet. This is your best bet.
Yes.
But I think the problem has never been Russ the player. The problem has always been Russ the acquisition and Russ the contract. When you take up
And
that,
the decisions made in the aftermath about who you wanted to keep using bird rights and who you didn't.
right, that
Yeah.
too, right, and like some of
None
that,
of that is Russ's fault. Or very little of it. Like I don't think they were like, "Hey Russ, you want to keep Alex Caruso?" And he was like, "Nah."
Oh.
And they're like, "Oh, okay, let him go."
Well, but it is Russ's contract's fault.
Well, yeah, but Russ didn't, it's not his fault that the NBA operates in a capped league. Like that's
Well, but that's known.
I'm not hesitant. I'm hesitant to blame him for being highly paid, is I guess my point. Like him personally. Like it is the contract and it's the decision to acquire a player like that.
Okay.
Like that is what's responsible for that to me, not the player. Like I can't be like, Russ, you should have taken a
That feels
buyout
like
and made less.
That feels like a distinction without a difference, though. Like to me, the contract is the contract. That's part of the deal that you made. You knew that going in.
I guess the distinction to me is like it's the Russ decision versus Russ.
No, I mean,
You know
like,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like I think most of this stuff ties back to the Russ decision.
yeah.
There are certain things that he has done bad, but it's the
Yeah.
decision that kind of looms larger over that causes all these other things.
Okay, like, but
Like, he's
but
not the
there,
GM of the Lakers. That's LeBron.
but I also don't think though that like Russ, I would be perfectly fine rolling with you 100% on this if Russ did everything he could to make it work, but he hasn't.
No.
know,
I mean, that
he
part
hasn't
is his
played
fault, for
defense.
sure. No, that part is his fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I'm
that's
not
why
absolving him of blame for that.
Yeah, so I don't know how to do the actual arithmetic on that, like the mental arithmetic. I have no idea, but I do know though that like if you really want to find, well, I guess if you go far enough back, the real fork in the road moment was not including THT in that Lowry trade. If you were going to get rid, like if you're getting ready to move KCP,
I thought we were tying back to last week, and you were going to say if you really want to tie it all the way back, it's God's fault. Like
that's fine too. All right, let's move on though. We don't need to go all the way that far. Where do Lakers go from? Honestly, it was all the woolly mammoth's fault. Like
I don't. If they
come
hadn't
on.
gone extinct, this wouldn't have happened. Okay.
come back, Marcus All. All right, so
Did you see that he was in the Lakers misery misery
so
Twitter
great.
spaces? I love him so much. He's such a troll. Like I made a Marc Gasol in semi-pro joke over the summer. He liked the tweet. Like Marc Gasol has a sense of humor. I have since he has left, I've gained an even greater appreciation for Marc Gasol the person. Like
Yeah.
him showing up in these Lakers Twitter spaces all the time, just like from Spain, it's like the afternoon or whatever. He's in there. He's just like laughing at like how the poorly things are going. I love this. I'm sorry. Like
sipping
it's
on a
funny.
Pinot Noir rosé, just like,
Yeah.
all right, let's see what these
Hey,
poor saps are doing.
He's checking his phone at like halftime of his game. Like
Didn't he retire? I think he retired.
no,
I think
he's playing for his own team in like the second division in Spain. He's gonna win MVP, I believe. I think he's averaging like 35 a game. Like his numbers are ridiculous because he's playing against guys that are not anywhere near NBA He's basically like if Jackie Moon was Michael Jordan. Like it's incredible.
Live your life, man. I
I
respect
know. Look,
it.
who
I
would
love
want to
it.
go back to the NBA after that? Like, he made his money. He competed for what he can. Like, it's probably fun as hell.
Where's his league located in?
Spain?
Well, like where in Spain? Is it like
I don't-
coastal Spain? If it's like coastal Spain, that dude is fucking living.
I honestly do not. I'm not familiar enough with Spanish geography to answer that question.
Mark, if you're listening or watching, let us know. Hit us
Fly
up in
us
the
out.
comments.
We'll record a Lakers lounge, like with you.
Look,
we can do like our own.
I will
Lakers
make a
history
podcast
spaces.
for that guy's team.
And you got Campaign jumping in after the game and being like the Lakers are the worst team in the West, and they're like, you're being recorded, and he's like, well, we obviously respect every NBA team.
Do you think like if somebody would have said something kind of mean to Campaign, he would have fallen over? Like, do you think he would have like
the phone dropped to the ground?
he just flops? Yeah, he just like Cam, go through one possession without falling over. All
But
right,
for where the Lakers go
where
from
do
here,
the Lakers go?
They go get Marc Gasol from Spain, Anthony. we got to go back. That's when it all started.
That's why he's been tuning in on these spaces. When are they going to offer me my job back?
I don't know the answer to that question. Like, I honestly, this is not like a indecisive Harrison, whatever. Like, I'm not trying to say the wrong thing type of thing. Like, I genuinely have no clue what they can do to make this kind of more tenable for the rest of the year. Because if you're not going to send Russ home and you're not going to fire Frank, and I think that we've covered the reasons why they're probably not going to do either of those things. Like, do they have like a team counselor come in and just be like, hey guys, can you not hate each other? Like, what do they do? Or is this just going to be a tire fire the rest of the year? Like, you know, I don't know. I know that you who was it? It was Wayne Bembry that got cut today by the
DeAndre Bembry.
DeAndre Bembry. What? Oh, Wayne Embry. I was like mixing him up as like an old, they did like a historical post on him today. DeAndre Bembry got cut. And you know, I know that you are like, hey, you love buyout editions. There's nothing you love more than buyout editions and getting mad when they get promised things. And so this is like your time of year. And but like, you know, he's not saving this season.
No.
You know, no one on the buyout market is coming in and fixing it.
No, absolutely not. Well, if that's the goal, then you don't do anything. If the goal, like if you're,
what is the goal? I don't.
Well, that's the thing though, right? Like that's the question. That's the $1 million question here, right? Is that like, all right, yeah. The goal here, if it's to fix this season and to turn this season around, then there's nothing at all that the Lakers can do. Nothing. If the goal is, hey, try to get some positive momentum going into next season with some guys who might be able to stick around, then yeah, I think you do take a longer look at Bembry, Wayne Bembry's great-great-grandson or something like that. Embry. Yeah. But,
no relation. I just similar sounding last names. Or at least I assume no relation. I don't know.
But like I would like the Lakers to take a. I would like to see the Lakers get involved in DeAndre Bembry. He plays solid defense, shoots okay from 3-point range.
So you're ready for them to sign another guy named DeAndre from the Nets?
Just swap out DeAndre's. just swap. But here's the other thing. At this point, there is no reason to have Jordan on the team. There's no reason whatsoever to have him on the roster. I understood keeping him through to the deadline because you might need some filler contracts. Gives you some more flexibility there without having to move guys that are actually
like
part.
Keep Russ from storming off the floor when he gets benched. Like, you
also
know,
that
valuable things, you know.
Mm-hmm. But like at this stage, he's not going to help you on the court. You know that he's going to get replaced at some point. He shouldn't be on the roster anymore. I think you could probably say the same for Kent Bazemore. I think for him, he's complicated, man. He's that one thing that I probably should quit that I won't. He's my alcohol.
Oh, I've given up. I gave up like
no, I like I said, I probably should too.
Like 20, like I don't know, 15 games into the season. Like before he got benched, I had basically given up on like Kent Bazemore being like a meaningful part of this team.
Yeah,
like, he's truly one of my least favorite Lakers to watch from a basketball perspective in a long time.
All true. So I think
like a very, very nice man, but yeah, I just do not enjoy watching him play basketball at all.
I don't think he does.
Definitely carry water, Anthony. You know, he's a lumber enthusiast.
Maybe that's his problem. He hasn't worked on any basketball skills. He's just chopping wood and carrying water.
There like Mr. Miyagi. He's like, no, go chop some wood and carry some water, and your jumper will return.
He's like, Frank, my hands are so calloused. I can't hold a basketball right now.
I can't chop any more wood or carry any more water.
Or dribble with at all. No, but I think there's some value in trying to, you know, move guys that are at the end of the roster to try to bring in some guys who have a little bit more upside than those guys currently have. Because the problem is
you got to shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic in series.
Yeah. No, you really do. You honestly do. The view on the other side is way better if you can't see the iceberg.
Yeah, that's what the captain said before it wasn't his fault that it sunk.
He's just
had to get it in. Direction. We got to get one in every week.
The other thing, I mean, you kind of mentioned it in passing. The Russ and Vogel relationship has frayed to a point this is
toxic. Like, yeah, you have Frank. I have never heard him talk about a player like he talks about Russ. And he says it's almost jarring because he says it with a smile on his face. He's talking like Dad Frank, but he's like, yeah, you know, you hope the player like is going to learn from being benched and they're going to get better. Like not even using his name. You hope the player is going to learn from being benched and get better from it. And it's like, oh, well, you know, I of course respect all the things that Russ has done for this team and all the, you know, all the, or not for this team, but in his career, I respect all of his past production, but I got to look out for the team and do the things that, you know, help the team win. And basically saying Russ is not that, in my opinion. So
no if he isn't playing, and then Russ after the games, right, is saying that no, there has been no communication, and yes, I have earned the right to be able to start, and there's just like back and forth in the media about it. I don't know.
Guys talk to each other, like
it's an option. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't like. Maybe Frank comes from the school of Byron, where like you have to earn the right to be able.
They forgot to take Byron's sign on the office down that says like no players
do
allowed.
Not come in here.
Do not make eye contact with me.
Right. The other news from today, like Zane is talking about here, the season starts when Kendrick Nunn gets back. Season's never starting, bud. Like I've been trying to tell everybody over the course of the season. We have been trying to tell everybody over the course of the season the way that the Lakers have handled this and some of the stuff that you hear behind the scenes. Look, neither you or I are doctors, but it has never seemed like this guy was going to play this year. And it just like. You went from February to later in February to now late March.
I found an article that I wrote in the preseason saying Frank Vogel hopeful Kendrick Nunn will be back for season opener.
For the opener. 50-something games ago.
And now it's like, he's like, oh, yeah, you know, he's probably not going to be back till March. And Rob Pelinka comes out and it's like, yeah, he's probably not going to be back till late March.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, okay. Yeah. The Lakers' last game is on April 10th.
It's two weeks before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, that's not a meaningful reinforcement coming in at that point because, you know, he's coming off of a knee injury. He's not like, he hasn't been out there running and playing in pickup games to try and stay in shape. You know what I mean? Like this is not someone that you can count on anything from at this point. And so, yeah, I mean, this just sort of, I had not been, I think it was around like December or something that I wrote, or January that I wrote, like, I don't know that I expect to see this guy this season at this point. And nothing that has happened since then has kind of dissuaded me from that take. It's just like, it's been so nebulous. It's so constantly kicking the can down the road to avoid saying we're shutting him down. Like, I just, you know, maybe there are genuine medical reasons for that. Again, neither of us are doctors, but it's just never felt like a normal injury saga where the guy is like going to come back.
Well, it just doesn't ever sound good when the harder they work him, the worse his knee gets. And that's in practice settings. That's not going out and playing a game and re-injuring it. It's, hey, we like escalated his practice level up a notch and his knee couldn't handle it. And, you know, that's not normally something that happens. And like, look, I get this a lot, you know, stuff like this from Barnes, worst bone bruise of all time. But Jen's in the other room. I'll bring her in here and she can explain that depending on the location of the bruise, different areas of the body get certain amounts of blood flow.
Yeah, no, Dr. Brar has written about this for us repeatedly. Like, bone bruises sometimes do take this long. Like, it is, I know that
sometimes they require surgery.
Like not a significant thing, but a bone bruise is a different thing, and they can really linger. And there's like no specific timetable. You never know how anyone is going to heal, or at least this is my understanding. So it's, you know, like it's obviously a bad bone bruise, and it's on the worse end of it than the better end of it, and the more manageable end of it. But it's clearly not something that is going to kind of, you know, at this point, you just can't expect anything from him.
Yeah, like what Jen. So I remember asking Jen about this the first time that it got pushed back, and I asked her. I think I talked about this on one of the lowdowns back then, and I said that like, and like you said, Dr. Brar wrote about this too. He's an actual doctor. He's going to explain this better than me. But what will sometimes happen with some of these bone bruises that are deep inside these locations that the blood flow doesn't reach as considerably as in other areas, is that you wind up having to go and open up that area so that you can get some blood flow in there so that bone bruise can kind of start to heal itself. And if it doesn't happen on its own, you are required to go in there and clean it out with surgery. And look, I think the next update is going to be that. I think we're probably late March already. You're a week or two away from the end of the season. I think the next update is probably going to be something along the lines of either he's just shut down without any surgery pending, or yeah, we're going to go in there and try to clean it out and get him ready because he has a player option for next year. He's probably going to take that option.
I don't see how he wouldn't take that option at this point.
Oh no,
you know,
yeah.
like, it's just there's no way that he's going to get more than that on the open market.
Right. So I think I think that's where this is heading. And when Rob kind of alludes to it as a way that the Lakers might improve after this trade deadline, it's kind of a laughable statement to make. And then on this buyout market too, you never know with buyouts. John Hollinger wrote up a piece today talking about some of the veterans who are going to be available in this buyout market. One of the blows that really kind of hurt me on this front was Thaddeus Young getting traded to Toronto. That was somebody that actually would have not solved the Lakers, but really seriously helped. That doesn't appear like it's happening. So if you guys are asking, if you guys are ever curious what type of player, what we would like to see the Lakers add to this roster, I know for me personally, any walking, talking, breathing wing, any of them whatsoever. It's the Lakers are so deficient in terms of sizable athleticism that they still seriously need to add that. And then look, the Lakers probably also need to find a more consistent backup center. Dwight looks good once a week, but you're going to wear out AD, you're going to wear out LeBron playing them like that. So you probably need some kind of a center, hoping for DeAndre or Damian Jones, clearly, obviously hoping for that on my end. But any center who can.
Would you take Andre Drummond back? Has this season broken you enough?
He's starting in Brooklyn.
No. I'm just saying. Look, in a hypothetical scenario where he got cut.
Yeah, he's better than both Dwight and DeAndre. He's better than both of those guys.
So can you apologize for some of your takes last year?
No, because he shouldn't have been promised the starting role.
Worth a shot.
Is there anything beyond those two things that you would look for in the buyout market? Do you think the Lakers should send Russ home?
I honestly do not think that it's I don't think that it's the worst idea in the world.
I don't think it's a coincidence that Talen Horton-Tucker played his best game in a long time while Russ was out. And if you're the Lakers and you're talking about the long-term investment here, if you aren't because basically what they told everybody is, hey, there isn't a move that wins us the championship this year. We're trying to build for the future. Fine. If that's what you're going to do, send Russ home and give THT the keys because he is your hypothetical future.
I am empathetic to Russ and the circumstances that he is dealing with, where he's
Absolutely.
having to come to terms with, not being what he once was,
mortality,
having to be asked to do different things constantly. He's been the most consistent guy in the lineup. I understand why he is frustrated. I also think, and I made this point when I was on with Claire DeLune yesterday on her green room, I think that he has handled this about as poorly as he possibly could have. And so that is where kind of I understand why he is not handling it well and why he is upset and why he is throwing a fit on the bench when he gets benched and, all of these things. I totally get it on a human level.
Look, but I just benched me. I wanted to troll. I wanted to troll Raj and Sabrina throughout their entire recording, but apparently that's frowned upon at SB Nation.
Yeah, no, you are. Believe it or not, you're not allowed to crash the contractor's recording and then just scream at them the whole time. Yeah, it's frowned upon. So yeah, I mean, it's just I'm not necessarily arguing for them to do that, but I do think that if things continue to go this way and it continues to be this ugly, I don't think that we're out of the realm where that is something that could possibly happen.
I'm looking at it there's that to factor in too, but I'm looking at it from a practical logistical standpoint where
it's just not a functional work environment.
Well, that, but also for Talen, Frank refuses to not play him. Alongside Russ.
You get his trade value up. You have him play a lot more games like last night.
Yeah. And by the way, he looked good.
Yeah.
Like I thought the fouling was a problem, and he's going to turn the ball over some, but like so does Russ.
And some of those
Russ,
fouls were a little ticky-tack. Like, that wasn't totally his fault. It's like
Yeah.
Sabrina actually made a great point on the show that he just sucks at hiding that he's shoving with his off arm.
He does. Yeah.
And like after she brought it up, I was like, oh, damn, I have no
every drive is a Heisman pose.
in fairness to him, his arms are like 7 feet long, so they stand out a little bit more in the crowd. But yeah, he's got to work on that. Maybe Handy can teach him to shove more subtly.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the other thing. You get these report like Kendrick Perkins, who is close to LeBron, who is close to Phil Handy from their day in Cleveland.
You wonder where that was coming from.
The day before the trade deadline, it's like, yeah, Russ hasn't worked with Phil Handy all year.
Yeah.
And it's like, whether that's true or not, like how true that is, whatever, if it's an exaggeration, like the fact that is coming out is not,
somebody has that gripe.
This super functional work environment.
Yeah. Somebody has that complaint
and not trying to point the finger.
Right. Like somebody within the Lakers has that complaint. Like, hey, here's this player development guy. You clearly need to take this next step in your evolution as a player. He can help you do that. And we don't think you've done that to that extent.
Not taking criticism in film sessions well,
Also
which if you've watched a single media interview he's ever done would not surprise you. Yeah, it's just like, at some point, this is not a thing that this is not a situation that's helping the team. And you got to try and you're talking about what do you do going forward? Again, I'm not necessarily arguing for it yet. I think maybe cooler heads prevail. Maybe now that you're past the deadline, everyone can just kind of say, hey, we're going to lock in last 20 games. Let's just, we may not all like each other, but let's just all try and do something and salvage something. Everyone's laughing at us. Let's try and fix this. And that's the only thing that you can hope for. And that's why I wouldn't do it yet. But if it goes 5 more games or it's just this back and forth, you got to get rid of Russ or you got to get rid of Vogel. You can't do this the whole rest of the year.
Yeah.
And claim that you're trying to win.
I just picture, because we keep on going back to the Titanic jokes, I just picture Russ in those film sessions when they're telling him, hey, man, you got to make a rotation. He's just like, I have a child. I'm a father. I'm a father of multiple children. You can't disrespect me like this. I hope, and this is the other thing too, because, and this is the last thing I really kind of wanted to touch on before did you want to talk about your
we got to do it. It's a recurring segment. We got to do it.
Because I actually have one on that front too. But all right, so
let's do it. We'll get them both out.
Last point then is that you hear all these rumors about people throughout the league considering Russ a lot similarly to the way that it went for Allen Iverson at the end of his career, and how there was just this unrelenting belief in oneself that got this player to that point, by the way. AI was this 5'11" athletic dynamo who, granted, was very talented in all those things, but that machismo is what helped him get him into the Hall of Fame in the first place. So it's really difficult to turn that off. And then with Russ, the why not persona, why not take off from a step within the free throw line to try to dunk it on 3 different players if you can maybe try to do it? Why not? And then eventually you're not able to do those things physically, but the brain doesn't work that way. It doesn't compute what you can no longer do. The brain is used to doing the things that you have been doing your whole life. And so, on a very human level, I understand why it's difficult for Russ to be able to do this. However, he has Carmelo Anthony on this very team. And Carmelo went through this exact same thing.
Until Melo's back.
That's true. It's absolutely Russ and Melo and none didn't play last night. So clearly that is not the Lakers team that we should be evaluating. But Melo has seen this happen to him, where the league, we saw this with I kind of poked fun a little bit at the guy who covers the Spurs on today's Twitter Spaces, where the Spurs don't want to go into a full rebuild. They don't want to consider themselves a rebuilding team. Kings, same thing. They want to see themselves as this playoff contender, but sometimes the league just tells you who you are, right? Sometimes the market,
Lakers who they are all year.
The league has told Russ what he is now all year, and the league told Melo what he was back then, and he found himself out of the league entirely until he realized the things that he needed to do to be able to get back into and stay in said league. And I think here with Russ, look, if he wants to step away, we saw this with Kobe, where it was asked of him, hey, could you ever see yourself sticking around and taking on like a 6-man role and extending your career that way? And he said, no. Why would I do that? I'm Kobe Bryant. I couldn't, and he earned the right to that stage of his career to say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm Kobe goddamn Bryant. And I think Russ has earned that ability too, to where if the league tells him this, he's allowed to say, fine, I don't want to be a part of a league that sees me that way. That's perfectly fine. However, he has 1 year left on his contract. And if he wants to be active in that final year of his contract and then be active within this league within it, he is going to have to rethink a lot of the things that the way that he carries himself as a professional basketball player. Look,
you can't care as little about defense as he so often does. You can't just completely like do the James Harden, I'm just going to have my hands on my knee. Like, he's a good cutter. He's a good screener. Like, we've seen you do these things. Just do more often.
Yeah. It's how it usually works with a lot of these incredible basketball players. When Kobe decided he would want to pass, he would get like 16 assists.
Yeah.
He's just like, because he felt like it. If
sometimes like, he could activate.
No, that was a legit. And then the funniest thing was during those stretches where he would like average 15 assists for like a couple weeks or something like that. The Lakers looked incredible, and I'd see that like, yeah, Kobe, it'd be nice. but like,
he's like, my point has been proven. It's time to go back to doing what I do best. And hey, look, it worked for him to the tune of 5 rings. Like, if you're Kobe, you get to do that.
Absolutely.
When you're Russ, it's like
until the league tells,
stretches,
until the league told Kobe that he was not that player anymore. And you're like, awesome the way that Kobe's career ended. It is still one of my favorite all-time games ever, was that Utah Jazz game. I was literally bawling in my living room when he crossed that, 45, 50, 55, 60. That was an incredible night and all that. And some guys are able to roll out on that kind of red carpet. Some guys don't, though. Some guys, the league tells them very rudely, this is it, man. Unless you rethink some shit, this is it.
And I mean, maybe it changes, but that's the direction we're heading with Russ now.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. Speaking of the league and the world telling us that this is the direction that the world is heading for me, I'm going to start here.
Okay.
I literally slept wrong on my Achilles heel the other night. Woke up with a giant.
What do you mean you slept wrong on your Achilles heel?
I'm telling you, I woke up one morning and I legitimately have I have my foot wrapped right now because my Achilles just flared up overnight while I was sleeping. So that's my embarrassing, good God, I am out of shape and old and probably shouldn't judge anybody story.
Yeah, so the world has been out to get me all week, and that is usually the case during trade deadline week. Like, first,
Did Rob cut in line when you were trying to get your churro at Disneyland?
First of all, I have to disavow the podcast Fedora once again, because I don't know if you saw this tweet from last week. It was this girl, Nikki Munitz, at @nmunitz. Like, she tweeted, "This was 3 years ago. I would love for LeBron to leave the Lakers so I could root for them again." And it's like her in a Lakers fedora at like Staples Center, or then the artist formerly known as Staples Center. And I'm like, oh man, like now this is what I'm associated with. And like,
Yep.
I think I officially have to disavow it and never bring it back.
Yeah.
A show
all time bad take.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
guy won a championship.
Like, I can't root for this team anymore because LeBron is on. I mean, first of all, I know the reason, but it's also like, yeah, I can't be associated with that. And so that, and I thought originally when I messaged you, I'm like, this is what I got to talk to you about on this week's misfortune, because like my whole brand has been destroyed by this one tweet that is getting ratioed to hell on Lakers Twitter and everybody's dunking on. But then something even worse happened where, earlier this week, it was 2 days ago, I'm getting set to, continue doing some pre-writes, continue prepping for the trade deadline, do all this stuff, just get to work. I'm like, let me grab a snack real quick, grab a protein bar, bite into it. I somehow chipped the back of my molar on this protein bar.
Oh, a molar?
It was like a filling, but it like broke off a giant chunk of the filling. And first of all, I'm pretty sure I almost chipped a tooth on that before I realized like it was my tooth and I could not like, bite through it. Yeah. And so, I'm like, oh, this sucks. Like, and it hurt at first, like really bad. If you drank
Yeah.
anywhere on that side of the mouth, like eat whatever. So that, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to be playing hurt this week real bad. And then, so I'm like, okay, let me call my dentist, see if they can like get me in real quick and just kind of deal with this, whatever. They don't have an appointment till next week. And so, because I understand they're backed up because of COVID. Like people didn't want to go to the dentist during the latest wave, and I get it. So they're like, yeah, we have surgeries and stuff that we have to do. It's like, okay, wait, but what do I do? So thankfully it has gotten a little better, but I've been playing hurt. This is sort of like my flu game, like doing the trade
really
deadline
is.
while only having like half a functioning mouth. Like I
There,
think
there are very few injuries that could affect our ability to do our job. And for you, it's like stuff with your
Achilles
hands.
has probably not affected your job whatsoever.
No,
it's annoying,
I mean,
but like I can't imagine that it's affected your job very much.
Getting up from the chair right now is going to suck because I haven't been able to move it and stuff. But like, yeah, I've been relatively fine doing my job but look, your mouth, your hands in your mouth are what you got to really protect. And
Somebody's gonna clip that out of context.
All right.
This is why Twitter had you on adult settings like for so long, and you had lost so many followers.
It's so hilarious that like I crossed the 18s into the 18s simply because I'm no longer considered like the world's worst porn account, by the way, is what I would have been considered back in the day. I didn't post any.
Don't
Anyway.
use this as the clip for social, please.
All right, that's going to do it for this special live edition of the trade deadline recap Lakers Lounge show. You know what? I asked Harrison, hey, do you want to try doing this live? And he said, not really. And I said, all right, we'll put it to a poll. We did. The people spoke. You tried to sway them. You kind of did, by the way.
I'm just mad that I didn't, because that whole thing led me to like, you were like, oh, Harrison trying to like undermine democracy and whatever. Like, I'm just mad that I didn't, come up with Stop Lestiel when the whole All-Star saga thing was going on. Cause like that popped into my head. And I'm like, damn, that would have been really good when all the Warriors fans were mad about LeBron, like rigging quote unquote the vote totals. That could have been like Stop Lestiel, and I probably would have went viral. And now it's like, I'll save it for next year.
Yeah, no, you can't. All right, that's going to do it, though. Like I said earlier, I have an episode of The Lowdown to record tonight, although nothing has happened, so I'm probably just going to leave it with the trade deadline recap that is already up on the feed right now. And then Aaron and I...
You got to recap the All-Star draft. This is important to the Lakers' fortune.
Honestly, I could do an entire show with you about that, about like just going like beat for
anyone. If you haven't watched it, go watch I'm sure it's like on YouTube somewhere. Or whatever.
Yeah.
The LeBron KD All-Star draft is as good as Inside the NBA like can be. It's
as
like
good as TV can be.
Yeah, it was as live TV especially. It was incredible.
Yeah. All right, that's gonna do it though. I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Harrison Fagan. This has been the Lakers Lounge. We'll talk to you guys next week.